Hello and welcome in as it is conflicting. It's a conflicting Monday here in Cincinnati. Off the bench, hosted by Reed Mouse. Trace Fowler will be back tomorrow. But it is both exciting and tumultuous times here in good old Cincinnati as, man, what a hot and cold weekend that was for the sports teams in town as the Cincinnati Bengals suffered their worst loss in franchise history. I watched that entire game and had a camera on me for that entire game, and it got really sad and really dark at the end of that one. While the Cincinnati Reds, who have been killed by people on this show, the coroners of this show had called their season dead a dozen times, including myself. This off the bench in its current iteration had been back for 2 weeks, and the Red season had been declared dead twice, once by Trace, once by me. So, but here they are, last week of the season, firmly holding a final playoff spot. And man, oh man, it is weird times. We're going to talk about it all today. We're going to talk about the Reds for the first half of the show. I'm certainly the guy you want to hear talk about the Cincinnati Reds on a day like today. And then we're going to talk about the Bengals later on. And man, I had a take last week that I'm already taking back. Stone Shields producing in the chair today. Stone, how are you? You looking dapper as always.
Appreciate it, Reed. Happy to be here. Didn't think that it'd be September 22nd and we would be talking about the Reds being in a playoff race and having a playoff spot if the season were to end today, and the Bengals getting whooped and having their worst loss in franchise history. I mean, just brutal. But we got some positives with the Reds, so this could be a lot worse here today, but the Red Legs are going to save us a little bit.
The Reds control their own destiny. They take care of business. And they will be playing in Chavez Ravine next week. Likely Chavez Ravine. That hasn't been clinched up yet. But likely Chavez Ravine down there in L.A. against the Dodgers in a 3-game series. But they've got 6 games to get there. And the final thing I'll take before I just dive right into the Reds game. Out of all the things, I've said this in now 36 group chats. I said this in this studio as we were, having a little show flow, having a pre-show meeting and everything like that. When it comes to this Bengals game, I cannot wrap my brain around this stat. Like sometimes people are like, you can't wrap your brain around how big the universe is. And you see like that scale, and like you start here and here's the world's tallest building, here's the Mount Everest, and you keep zooming out, and you see how big the universe is. And even then you can't really grasp your brain around how big everything is. I cannot grasp this stat from yesterday's Bengals game, and this is the final thing I'll touch on before I get into my Reds, and we'll talk about the Bengals later. But at halftime yesterday, the Minnesota Vikings had, I believe, 140 yards of offense. And they were beating us 31-3. With 140 yards of offense. Like, we were getting outgained by like 40 yards. Like, our offense wasn't doing well. Wasn't doing well. But 140 yards of offense. And we were losing 31-3. But Cincinnati Reds 4-game sweep of the Chicago Cubs. Obviously, you guys know I'm a Cubs fan, so it was a tough place. And, I will say this. I tweeted it out, and I don't care if you believe me or not. I'm just telling you, this is maybe my brain trying to grasp it. You can punch down all the good stuff. You can do that, fine. Your opinions on me do not bother me more often than not. Sometimes they get a little finicky, but most of the time I do not care. When I say that this sweep meant nothing to me, I wanted the Reds to do this because I want the Reds to be in a postseason spot. I want my family, dads, brother, all my friends, Reds fans, I want them to enjoy this. I want you guys all to enjoy playoff baseball here in Cincinnati because I understand how much it means. But they get their first 4-game sweep of the Chicago Cubs since 2018. It's the first time that the Cubs have been swept in a 4-game series all season long. It's the longest losing streak. The Cubs had not lost 4 consecutive games all season long. And the Reds, for pretty much ever since the Mets started to free fall. The Mets had one of the best, if not the best record, I think, in the National League in the middle of the summer, and they just started to plummet. And everyone kept talking about, man, it's right there. It's right there. Multiple times the Reds had an opportunity to, take that final wild card spot. Half game out with a chance to play, or a game out, and you're just sitting there. And it just, every time it felt like the Reds were about to grab it, it'd slip away and it'd get to 3 games. Famously, it was up to 6 games. Right, the first day we started this show, September 6th. Yeah, the first day of the show, the Reds were 6 games out. And here they are, final week of the year, 6 games to play, and they've got that final wild card spot. And it's amazing. It truly is amazing that the Reds, we talked about how every single time it felt like they were right there, it slips through their fingers. And they finally grabbed it against I assume their biggest rival, second biggest rival in the Chicago Cubs. And you do it. And now you got to ask those Cubs to go and beat the Mets in 3 games. But you control your own destiny in a 3-game series here against the Pittsburgh Pirates. You go play 3 games against the Milwaukee Brewers to close out the season. You can take care of it all. You go to the playoffs. 2 teams kind of looming around you. Obviously the Mets, who play 3 games against the Cubs, then 3 games down in Miami. Then you also got the Diamondbacks, who don't count them out. They're only a game back, and they've got a much tougher road. They play 3 games against the Padres and 3 games against the Dodgers, though it seems likely that the Dodgers will be taking off that final series if they clinch the division by then, which seems very likely. And that's the positive for the Reds, is the Brewers. The only thing they have to play for at this time, they've got the division clinched up. The only thing they have to play for is they've got a 3-game advantage over the Philadelphia Phillies here going in. So by the time that the Reds play the Brewers at the back end of this week, it's likely that the Brewers will have the first seed clinched up to where they can kind of just take it easy. Get the guys that need rest. Get your arms all ready to go. Get the players, like if anyone banged up, just sit them down for a couple days and get them right before they get to the NLDS. But they also still might play because they will get a bye. Like they'll go a full week without playing because of the wild card series that they will not be playing them. So a lot of things going right for the Reds. But at the end of the day, man, everyone came up this series when they needed it to. Thursday night, you got Hunter Green on the bump. You give him 1 run, they win the game. Next 2 games, it is a home run palooza from the Cincinnati Reds lineup, and everyone all season long, and rightfully so. This Reds team has no pop. Spencer Steer hits 3 home runs in 2 games. Ellie De La Cruz hits his first home run in 40 games or whatever it was. His second home run in his last 300 plate appearances to get to 20 on the season. And that lineup finally stepped up. And then you get to Sunday's game. You get 1 run and then get shut down. I think the Reds had 1 base runner after they scored that 1 run. They had 1 base runner for the rest of the game. But Graham Ashcraft comes through. Tony Santillan comes through. Nick Martinez comes through. And you win the series. And this Reds team, through all the flack that they've gotten, through all the, this team's just not very good. This team can't hit. All the flack for Terry Francona. I don't understand the way he manages. Why are we playing this guy? Why is Santiago Espinal still playing? All the stuff that you go through in a marathon that is a 162-game season. The one thing that you cannot deny about this team is they've never given up on that hope or that dream. You hear it in the post-game interviews after. Man, we just keep fighting. We're pesky. I remember, being like I remember always thinking that the worst thing that an opposing team can call you is scrappy, because it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, right? It's like, you guys are very good, but you're scrappy. Then you take a second to think about it, and you're like, you know what? That says we're tough to beat. And that's where the Reds are playing right now. They're being pesky. They're staying alive. And now they've got a six games to get into the postseason, and rightfully so, everyone should be excited. My dad's texting me nonstop about how terrible the Cubs. I got a billion. You know that GIF of a L flag flying. I got a billion texts and tweets and DMs in the Discord about it, and I get it. It's all fun. It's all good. It's all in good fun. But here they go. Now they go into Tuesday, and the story, the tweet is pack GABP, pack Great American Ballpark. And the reason is Hunter Green caught some flack on Thursday night because he made a comment about how there wasn't a whole lot of fans down there at GABP. I know our boss here at Chatterbox Sports, Trace Fowler, has commented on Reds fans back in 2012, that Game 5 against the Giants. He went to that game and how at the start of the game it wasn't a packed stadium. I think if you go back, I obviously don't have video, or like I wasn't there. But if you go back and see the attendance for that game, it says it's sold out. But I'll take Trace's word that it wasn't sold out. But Hunter Green catches a lot of flack for saying, man, why isn't anyone showing up on a Thursday night? And everyone's like, well, if you competed and, you know, if you're fighting for something, really fighting for something, we would be there. And here we are on Tuesday. I'll give Reds fans credit. Because for as defensive as they got, and I understand it, when people are critical of you, as Hunter Green was of the Reds fans, going, "Hey, you guys gotta show up to the stadium and support us." As defensive as you got when he was being critical of you, you guys are answering because now they've won 4 games in a row and are in a playoff spot. You're like, all right, let's pack it. Let's go. Let's get 40,000 people at Great American Ballpark, and we see if they do. I know a lot of people. I see a lot of tweets. People buying tickets. People going to the game on Tuesday night. I saw a tweet yesterday, or I saw the clip of Nick Kirby saying that, is this the most important regular season series in Great American Ballpark history? Opened 22 years ago in 2003. Obviously, the Reds haven't had a whole lot of success since then. They've had, 4 playoff appearances in the GABP era, 2010, 2012, 2013, and then 2020 in the COVID season. Looking for number 5. And I'm not going to comment on the thought that a 3-game series to get the final wild card spot in September being the biggest season or biggest series in a 22-year-old stadium. I'm not going to comment on that. But it's undeniable that this is an opportunity. You're playing a bad team in the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that you quite honestly haven't played well against in the past few years. Played very well against the Cubs. You saw it this weekend, but you haven't played well against the Pittsburgh Pirates, despite them being a bad team. And you get a chance. You take 2 or 3, you take 3 of 3, and you put yourself in a golden opportunity to be playing playoff baseball on next Tuesday and next Wednesday. And the expanded playoffs finally getting there. Terry Francona's first season. First time getting Ellie De La Cruz and Hunter Green into the postseason. Hopefully first of many. Stone, you're the resident Reds fan here in the room. Overall reaction of the Reds currently holding a playoff spot?
Joy, to be honest with you. Lots of joy at the moment. You and a lot of people had written them off. I wasn't going to sit up here and say, oh, they're going to get in 100%, but I was kind of just hesitant to write them off because, as the Cowboys said a couple of weeks ago, they're like cockroaches. You just can't kill them. And that's kind of how things have gone. I mean, shoot, last weekend they get swept by the Athletics, and you're sitting there saying, well, that's just kind of a poetic end of the season, right? Just go up to Sacramento and just get whipped when you have a chance to really find yourself in the postseason. Then here they are. They win 6 of their last 7 games, sweep the Cubs, beat the Cardinals 2 out of 3, and now you have everything in front of you as far as what you're trying to accomplish. Pirates, I'm not going to say they've had your number. You're 6-4 against Pittsburgh this year, which is positive, obviously, but you would think that you would have a bit of a better record against them, as Pittsburgh is, they're Pittsburgh, right? But, you have an opportunity for a big showdown on Wednesday night. Hunter Green, Paul Skeens at GABP. Come on, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. But got to win this series against Pittsburgh. I don't think any of us feel great about the series against Milwaukee, regardless of what they have clinched, what isn't clinched, what they have to play for, what they don't. But got to get 2 out of 3 and got to pack GABP, as you said. But reason to really, really be excited because I think for us Cincinnati fans that actually are fans of both the professional teams here in Cincinnati, it could be a heck of a lot worse Monday after the performance that we'll talk about later on the show. But Reds win, and it's like, wow, the Reds are in the playoffs right now. So that's kind of helped the blow a little bit of the Bengals loss.
It's can I say something too about you mentioned about people that are fans of both teams like
Right.
yourself here in Cincinnati. I'm obviously a fan of the Bengals, not a fan of the Reds. Something that I've admittedly poked fun at and have kind of added fuel to the flame of, but I think is so dang stupid here in this town, and I saw people talking about it earlier in the chat, is this whole notion of this town's a baseball town or this town's a football town. And I think it's just so derivative. Like, it's so dumb. Like, why are we dividing the fans in that segment? Like I said, I've poked fun at it as a fan of one team before, but I can tell you right now, I don't mean it. I don't care if this town's a baseball town or a football town. It doesn't bring me joy when the Bengals are good and the Reds are not, or the Bengals are doing better than the Reds. And it shouldn't bring those joy that it happens the other ways. Like, this town's focused on the Reds now, not so much on the Bengals. Like, it's a sports town. We like our sports here. There's a reason that Friday nights in the fall are so important to this town. It's because we like high school sports. We like collegiate sports. We like our college basketball. We like Ohio State and Notre Dame and UC football. Like, we like sports in this town. Stop trying to drive a wedge at everything. It doesn't have to be a baseball town or a football town. It can just be a sports town. Golly, it's so stupid. It's so dumb that every time that the Reds do something well, everyone goes, see, it's a baseball town, or every time the Bengals do something well and people stop showing up to Reds games. It's always, this isn't a baseball town. It feels like that's always the moniker. But I find it so dumb, so derivative, and it's just it's not productive is what it is. It's just point blank not productive to either team. To constantly be, instead of fighting, the Reds fighting the NL Central or the Bengals fighting the AFC North, you're fighting the other sports team that doesn't even play your gosh darn sports, your gosh dang team in the same sport. I'm getting flustered just thinking about it. It's so dumb, and I think it will always be dumb. Your thoughts on the Cincinnati Reds, the idea that this is the most important series in GABP history. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
I'm buying it. Off the top of my head, I don't think there's another one that stands out more so than this one against Pittsburgh. Even after you were kind of winning the games against the Cardinals, you're having success early against the Cubs. Obviously, it has to be pointed out that you needed help, and the Mets were giving you the help, right? So I
Shout out to the Nationals.
What's that?
Shout out to the Nationals.
Yeah, how about them? So I think, just especially where we were at even last week, it's kind of like, whoa, like we made up a lot of ground really, really quickly, considering what the Mets weren't able to do in their most recent games. But, yeah, I think you're in a spot right now where you're in the driver's seat, right? Even the most optimistic fans a week or so ago, it was like, well, we're going to need help. The final game of the year, we're probably going to need some help. Well, now you got 6 left, and you control your own destiny. So, absolutely, I think we are going to see the town really show up in a big way, because this town has shown you that if you are competitive and you can go out there and have an opportunity to win, they're going to show out for you and they're going to back you. And I think you're really going to see an incredible crowd, despite the fact it's in the middle of the week against Pittsburgh in this series, and hopefully the boys can deliver.
I think it speaks to the sleeper cell agent of Cincinnati Reds fandom, in that they're never near the top of ticket sales at the end of the year, right? Like the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis is about the same size as Cincinnati, and actually has a much smaller metropolitan area, I believe. And they sell out 30,000. This year's been an outlier, but they've always had 2.5 million fans at the end of the year. And I don't believe the Reds, even in their heyday, had gotten to like 3 million fans, and the Cardinals have done that many a times. And a big portion of that is because Cincinnati is a small town. It's obviously not Chicago. It's not Philadelphia or anything like that. But also the Reds fandom is kind of segmented over geographical area, right? A lot of Kentucky, they're Reds fans. Some parts of Tennessee, they're Reds fans, because for the longest time, and I just saw a graphic in 1953, the Reds were the farthest south team just 70 years ago, 60 years ago in the MLB. Like, they were the farthest south team farthest southern team, which is just wild to think about. So they take up a good portion of the South, and obviously they share those fans with the Atlanta Braves. So it's a fact that Reds fans are kind of all over the map and not just located here in Cincinnati is why they don't sell tickets. But it also goes to the fact that this fan, like we understand that how important baseball is to this town. When they start doing well, people come out of the woodworks and they just want to talk about the Reds all the time. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's why I think, like I say this every single time I'm on the show, it's why I like when the Reds are good as a fan, as a person who doesn't like the Reds, is because when you're in this town and the Reds are good, there's an electricity about it. It's fun when people are always, texting about the scores or watching the games. Everywhere you go, every bar you go to, every sports, restaurant you go to, people are really, really worried and really care about this team. It's cool when my dad starts texting me about the Reds and he's teasing me about how terrible the Cubs. That's fun for me. Like that's an awesome thing. And I poked fun earlier about like I'm not going to make a comment on this potentially being the biggest series in GABP history, which, like I've said, fighting the Pittsburgh Pirates in the final week of the year to get the third wild card spot. 22 or in the 23rd season of Great American Ballpark. That doesn't say much, but as we know, the Reds haven't had a historic, haven't been good over the past 2 decades. But it's hard to imagine something more meaningful than this series. In 2012 and 2010, they had locked up the NL Central and they were playoff contenders. I mean, the entire season. This has come out of nowhere, and you can kind of get almost a Detroit Tigers feel from last season. To where out of nowhere, here come the Tigers, and you kind of galvanize an entire fan base because it's really exciting at the right time, and you're playing ball at the right time. And I think there's also this notion that if the Reds do get in the postseason, the one thing that we've always heard about baseball, and it's true, is that when it comes to the postseason, you need great pitching. And it might not come from the same heroes that you'd expect. A couple years ago when the D-backs got the final wild card spot and won the National League pennant. They had Brandon Pfaadt, I believe went to Bellarmine down in Louisville. He's from Louisville. He had like a 6 ERA throughout the season, but he was nails in the postseason. That happens. Because when the games are do or die, shutting them down for 7 innings with a starting pitcher is huge. And we know here in Cincinnati that we'll put the starting rotation up against anybody in the National League. And that includes going to Chavez Ravine next week if the Reds are able to do that, clinch this wild card spot, and go play the Dodgers. That they'll take Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, and the starting rotation in a 3-game series, and they'll roll the dice with those guys, knowing it won't take a whole lot of runs to win. It's a deadly team if they're able to sneak in, which is part of the notion of just more than any other sport, truly more than any other sport, getting in as the final wild card team in football every year. We see these, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Denver Broncos last year, and they get in, but they're not really a threat. And it's proven. Like, when was the last time that a team had gotten in as the final wild card team in the NFL and made a deep run? I can't think. I mean, the most unlikely run in the last decade in the postseason comes to 2 teams. One of them's the Bengals going to the Super Bowl, beating. And they had an easy first couple games against the Raiders and the Titans, even though the Titans were the 1 seed, and then they take on the Chiefs and really had to come up with one huge upset. And then I think of that Jags team back like in 2018 with Blake Bortles that lost to the Pats in 2018. But in football, the better teams win. They just do. Baseball, it's a crapshoot, man. It's why when the conversation comes up about whether this sport should have a salary cap or not, which has its flaws, that argument on both sides. I think both ways. Like, it's clear that the money-driven teams are always in the postseason. But as we know, and I've said this before, baseball has a beautiful way, an absolutely gorgeous way of governing itself. The sport itself is so random at times that all you have to do is punch your ticket and you got a shot. Diamondbacks a couple years ago. Even the Rangers. I know they spent a lot of money, but the year that the Rangers won, I did the Phillies. When they went to the playoffs against the Astros, I think they were the last wild card team in the National League. You can fact check me on that one. But this team is certainly a team that you don't want to face in the postseason. And you tell Dodgers fans, you don't want to face this Reds team in the postseason, they'll laugh at you. You tell Phillies, even Brewers fans, you don't want to face this Reds team if you get in the postseason, they'll laugh at you. But we know it's true. We know that Hunter Green, when he's on his A game as he was Thursday night, is as tough as anybody in the league. Might be the best pitcher in the league. Andrew Abbott's had a fantastic season. This whole pitching staff is able to keep runs off the board. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters is can you outscore your opponent. And there is, as a guy that always likes to bring up the fact that maybe baseball doesn't need a salary cap. I don't care either way. If it does, I think it's fine. But as I mentioned, baseball has a beautiful way of governing itself. That there is something beautiful about the opportunity of the Reds knocking the Mets out of the postseason and then going and taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers in a wild card series, best of 3, and beating them 2 out of 3. That would be actually awesome. It'd be an absolutely wonderful thing for the sport to prove that these small market teams that don't spend a whole lot of money can compete with the big dogs and prove it on a big, big atmosphere. All right, so before we move over to the somber side, Stone, any final thoughts about the Reds? Are you going to be attending any of the games this week down at GABP?
TBD on that. Not exactly sure at this point. Shoot, I would love to get down there for a game, but it's all. I don't think it's about defeating a narrative per se, but I think there's probably some people, not to put a negative twist on this, that are sitting there saying, it all kind of feels a little bit too good to be true, and they'll lose this series against Pittsburgh, and they'll squander this away. So it's all about rising to the occasion and ultimately finding a way to get this done. You're a better team than Pittsburgh. You had a better staff. I get you got to deal with Skeens this time around. Pittsburgh can't hit the ball either, right? So you've got the better team on paper. You're clearly playing better baseball right now. It's all about getting it done. And if you can just win this series against the Pirates, you give yourself a chance. And totally agree with everything you said. I honestly got chills over here sitting here listening to you talk about it just because, if there's playoff baseball in this town, man, it's going to be electric.
Yep.
And Dodgers, that's a mountain climb, but also, it's a 3-game series too. It's not like you got to play 7 or best of 7 or best of 5.
No, against the Dodgers, 7-game series. But there's 6 games to get there, so let's take it one step at a time.
100%.
But as someone who has a show that starts at 11 Stone Shields, and obviously is the producer of this one, it's good for business to think that next week we'd have a Monday night football game, and then the Reds playing playoff baseball on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I think do they play 3 straight days? Yeah, I think they play Tuesday, awesome. Wednesday, Thursday. So the entire week next week, if the Reds make the postseason, potentially, unless they win in the first 2 games, we'd have a big primetime game for our sports teams here in town every single day next week, which is just going to be huge. It's just really exciting. Just point blank, really. Really exciting. I think you should get down there tomorrow. I think you should go. You should pack GABP. They still doing 3-2-1 nights because they got to get a lot of 2s. Then they're going to need a lot of 2s if they sell out tomorrow. So yeah. All right. So we're going to do a quick ad read, and then we're gonna get into the dismay that was the Bengals game yesterday. Which, if you guys want a fun watch, go back and watch our live watch along and just see me in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I think I stopped even talking about the game, and I was just in a pit of despair. All right, the Job Center is now hiring. Start working fast with weekly pay, flexible shifts, and great opportunities at top local employers. Apply in person at any location across 12 states or online at thejobcenter.com. Light up your events with Queen City Screens. Our cutting-edge LED video boards deliver vibrant visuals and crystal-clear displays for any occasion, from concerts to corporate events. We've got you covered. Visit queencityscreens.com to rent your LED solution today. Queen City Screens, where brilliance meets impact. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. It's actually funny because we were supposed to do, we pubbed it all last week. We were supposed to do a live watch-along down there at Smoke Justice in Covington. And something happened on the schedule, and they're pushing us back to another game. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of bummed out that we couldn't do that show because really excited. I thought it was going to be a good game. And then as the game marches on, you're like, it's probably for the better that we didn't do a watch along for this one. But the Cincinnati Bengals have their worst franchise loss. 48-10 to a backup quarterback in Carson Wentz. And here's the thing. A week ago, at this time, 7 days ago, I sat on this show, and the biggest story in Cincinnati at the time was Joe Burrow's injury. Everyone wanted, it was a national story too. Like, what's going to happen with Joe Burrow? He's got this, he's got this terrible turf toe injury. Is he going to come back at the end of the year? What do the Bengals do going forward? Do they go and get a vet? All that stuff. And I started off the show because I understood how negative that was. And like I did today, I like to talk about the positive before you get to the negative. I had a take that I think has soured. I mean, I don't know if I've ever had a take sour as quickly as that one. And I believed it, truly believed it. And I said, all the flack, I'm a Zac Taylor supporter here in this town. I'm okay if you want to move on from him. I truly am, but I also am going to defend him when things go well. And I sat here, and I looked at this camera, looked at all of you guys watching this stream, and I said, say what you want about Zac Taylor's play call, his situational decisions, his inability to get the team playing through the first couple of weeks, all the stuff that you want to say about Zac Taylor, go ahead and say it. There's truth to some of it. When I said there is one thing you have to acknowledge, and I truly believe this. It is the one thing that you absolutely need from any head coach is that your teams play hard and your teams continue to fight. They did that against the Jacksonville Jaguars last Sunday. They did not do that yesterday. I said that even when Joe Burrow went down 2 years ago, this team continued to fight. A couple things go wrong in yesterday's game, and I get it. It's 31-3 at halftime. How do you come back out and try to play in that second half? But his team, the defense quit. The offense did nothing. And for whatever reason, this team had just quit yesterday. And I truly mean this. I don't know how you galvanize a bunch after the performance yesterday. You hope, you pray. This is what everyone always says. They're professionals. They'll know what to do. And, yes, that's true, but they're also human beings. And just like professionals at a job, sometimes you need to galvanize a group to keep working towards a goal, or things can kind of unravel at the seams. And I don't know what Zac Taylor, how he goes about getting this team ready for next Monday against Denver. I put a tweet out last week, and I truly mean this. I thought the Bengals needed to win either in Minnesota or in Denver this coming Monday, because if they don't, I can see how the whole thing gets really ugly really quickly. And what by that I mean, I don't like our matchups against the Lions and the Packers. Maybe they luck into one of those wins, but you can see the path forward where you're starting to talk about moving pieces off from this roster and playing for the future. And I also said last week that of all the takeaways from Joe Burrow's injury, one that you can pretty much take to the bank is that Zac Taylor will be our head coach next year. And I said the only way in which he isn't our head coach next year is if it gets really ugly. And by that I mean multiple games of what you saw yesterday. Multiple uncompetitive, completely getting blown out games. I don't know if it'll continue to happen, but it's a tough stretch for the next few weeks. I thought that Sunday was winnable. You're a 3-point dog in Minnesota. I think next Monday's winnable. Then I see the spread come out, and one of our bosses, Sean Spurlock, put in our group chat that we have, he's like, hey, they're only 7.5-point underdogs. They're only 7.5-point underdogs in Denver next Monday. It's the second biggest spread in the NFL next week. We are the team, the second lowest opportunity, lowest chance to win. But it is the NFL. We saw the Browns beat the Packers as 8.5-point underdogs yesterday. So things happen in the National Football League. I'm not gonna call the season dead. I'm not going to say that Zac Taylor's head, I'm not going to put his head on a stake. I will admit that it was incredibly disparaging the way that they performed at the second half yesterday and towards the end of the first half. We had the ball. We had the ball with a minute 40. A minute 40 in the half. We do this bit like, hey, let's get a 2-for-1. Let's get a 2-for-1. Our ball to start the second half. We're down 14. We've already given their defense 7 points. Our defense personally looks great. Yeah, it's 17-3, but the defense had several sacks and we're making really nice plays, and all 17 points were off short field position or off of penalties that I've never seen the defense get called for an illegal block, but we did yesterday. So you're starting to think we have the ball with 1:40 left. It's 1st and 10 on their 35. We throw a pass out to Noah Fant. He fumbles it. They return it for a touchdown. 100 seconds to play in the half. Down 14. You're in scoring position. Chance to, score, get the ball back at the second half, and tie it up. And we go into half 31-3. Even, and this blew my mind, even when we give up another touchdown, right? We turn the ball, Jamar Chase turns the ball over again, and they go and score. So we go, all right, well, that's not good. It's not good. It's 28-3. This is terrible. Let's just go into halftime. And we hand the ball off to Samaje Perine. He fumbles the ball. We were giving up. Why not kneel? First off, Zach, why are we running the ball? But we were just giving up, and we still fumbled the ball. I did the show with Craig Sandlin yesterday, and we talked about the keys to the game, the keys for the Bengals to beat the Minnesota Vikings. And I said, the reason we won the first 2 games is, we get big turnovers in great times, right? We probably got lucky, and we did get lucky in the Browns game where they're just passer hitting off their hands and going to Jordan Battle. And we had a big turnover against against Jacksonville when they were about to go up 2 scores in the first half. And we get a turnover, and we eventually win that game. And I'm like, hey, we got to continue to win the turnover battle. Since Jake Browning took over midway through the second quarter, so we're talking 6.5 quarters of Jake Browning being our QB1. And 6.5 quarters of him being our QB1, the offense has turned the ball over 8 times. 8 times. 5 picks, 3 fumbles. I can't even imagine how it'd be that bad. Luckily, Rich Eisen thinks Jake Browning's a top 15 quarterback, so we got that going for us. And I'm a little too hard on Jake Browning. I'll always admit that. Because, and this is where you can kind of get pushed into your own narrative boxes, right? When there's oppositions to your opinions. I obviously love Joe Burrow, and I'll defend that guy tooth and nail. And then when Jake Browning plays well, I understand that it takes a little bit of away from Joe. And then the guys that bash on Joe all the time go like, see, Jake Browning can do it anyways. And I just go like, yeah, I'm watching Jake Browning play. I'm not seeing what you guys are seeing. Yeah, they're moving the ball. But 8 turnovers in 6.5 quarters. When you have a backup quarterback, you can't turn the ball over that much. And I know 3 of them weren't his fault. Actually, I mean, you can even say one of those picks wasn't his fault. It's fine. I don't care. But you just can't turn the ball over 8 times in 6.5 quarters. It's inept. Stone, I sent you a tweet. Joe Goodberry put out a tweet about the Bengals offense. And while you're getting that schemed up, there it is. This is EPA for a team. And the Bengals are the worst team in football offensively. It is the worst offensive team for the first 3 weeks. And you can take that back. It's the grid, and there's a little bit of it knocked away. But a big portion of that is the 5 turnovers they had yesterday. No doubt about it. But an even bigger portion, and Casey McAllister, who I've been texting back and forth about the Bengals about this, he keeps going, and it's true. The run game needs to be better. Just point blank needs to be better. I think Chase Brown has 90 yards on 40 carries to begin this year. Shout out to anyone that took him in their fantasy leagues. He had 1,400 yards from the line of scrimmage last year, 900 rushing, and he's got 90 rushing yards through the first 3 games on 40 carries. About 2 yards a carry. Not good. And you're just unable to get a backup quarterback moving without being able to move the ball on the ground. Our offensive line looks completely inept to get any push off the line. And to be honest with you guys, it doesn't look like it's going to improve. Like there's no cavalry coming over the hillside to save this offensive line. The only thing you can hope is that they get better. The only thing you can hope for is that they continue moving forward. And I mean that in both in hyperbole and in literal sense, that they keep moving forward. You just can't continue to play. And I remember after the Browns, and the Browns defense looks absolutely fantastic. They just shut down this Green Bay Packers offense, won a game against them. It looks like one of the best defenses in the league. And the conversation was after the Bengals won week 1 is, are you worried about this offense? Obviously, Joe Burrow's gone down, but I'm worried about this offense now after 3 weeks. I'm worried about it. We're dropping Jake Browning back. He's got no time to make decisions. We have to stay ahead of schedule, and we just can't do that because Jake Browning, love him as a backup quarterback, and I know I just kind of dissed him a little bit. He is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, and I've got to start grading him on that big of a curve that he's a backup. He's not Joe Burrow. But he's not going to convert 3rd and 10 very often. We did yesterday. We converted a 3rd and 12 we just ran a running back draw. We got 12 yards with Samaje Perine. But essentially the draw was a punt because they understood, hey, maybe we'll just catch them off guard, run the ball, and see if we can get 12 yards. Or at least, give our punter a little more room because we were backed into our own territory. This offense needs to stay ahead of schedule because Jake Browning's not going to get those 3rd and 10s. He's just not. He can get the 3rd and shorts, but very often he's not going to get those. Running for his life every single time he dropped back. And I knew the Vikings, if you've watched the Vikings enough over the past few years, you knew the Vikings were going to blitz. Blitz, blitz, blitz. And even then, they just had no answer for it the entire game. Stone, as you watched yesterday's game, what was your biggest takeaway from the Bengals?
Yeah, when Zach took the podium after the game, I think we all kind of knew what he was going to say, but I think he was 100% right. He kind of basically, he brought up the run game, how that's just disgusting, but really he was like, if you have 5 turnovers and lose the turnover battle 5-0, this is what's going to happen. And that's just the reality of the situation, right? Even with Joe Burrow, let's say Joe Burrow was playing yesterday, and if the Bengals would have lost the turnover battle 5-0, they still would have gotten blown out. Now, there's lots of other things that they need to correct and need to get better at with a backup quarterback, right? With no run game, literally no run game, right? You can't play football at the professional level with literally no run game. 10 carries, 3 yards for Chase Brown, absolutely ridiculous. Now, I understand that the offensive line, the guys that were brought in, they're supposed to be guys that are pass-blocking guys. Now, they haven't done a great job of that, obviously, but they're not really meant to be here to, help in the run game. But now all of a sudden your philosophy has to change because you lose your quarterback and you need to run the football. Dalton Reisner, he had the calf. We'll see. It kind of felt like he got benched, right? We'll see exactly how his injury, what they say. They went with the rookie Jalen Rivers, but they have to figure out a way to run the football if they even have a prayer of getting this thing turned around and even winning a couple of games going forward. But the biggest takeaway is turnovers, right? 5 turnovers, you don't force any, you're going to get blown out, and a backup quarterback on top of it. Just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to win. I mean, we won the first 2 games because we won the turnover margin.
Yep.
And we got blown out because we had 5 turnovers, 2 that were returned. By the way, shout out to Isaiah Rodgers, their cornerback, Minnesota Vikings quarterback. He's been in the league for about 5 years, and as terrible as it was for a Bengals fan, like that boy had a hell of a game. I mean, he had two returns for a touchdown. He caused 3 turnovers for a guy that's been a journeyman. He started like 10 games in his career as a cornerback. University of Massachusetts. I was looking him up because I was amazed that it just kept saying Isaiah Rodgers doing this, Isaiah Rodgers doing this. Yeah, he'd caused like 4 turnovers in his career prior to this in his 5 years in the NFL. Caused 3 yesterday and returned 2 for a touchdown. Like that's incredible. What a game for Isaiah Rodgers. But point blank, in a backup quarterback battle, you turn the ball over 5 times. Any game. You play any game in football, you turn the ball over 5 times. You're not going to win. Especially when the line is as soft as it's playing right now. Just getting bullied at the line. I made this point on the show before. I'll make it again. It's easy to win games when you have a great head coach. It's easy to win games when you have a great quarterback, and it's easy to win games when you have a great offensive line. And more often than not, it's the Bengals are not winning in the trenches. Football is often made more complicated than it really is. It's a game of push. Who's pushing who? And more often than not, the Bengals are the ones getting pushed. Point blank. Last year, every time that the defense blew a game, it was because we were getting pushed. This year, the offensive line is getting pushed back. In a game of push, we're not very good at it. But you have a chance to respond next Monday. Or as I've mentioned, you play the Broncos where you're going to be touched. I'm looking at the next 4 games, and the Bengals are going to be touchdown underdogs in most, if not all of them. They're already 7.5-point dogs in Denver. They're going to be at home against Detroit, the best case scenario. And I know betting lines aren't everything, but I'm just making this to bring out a point. The best case against Detroit is what? We are 5.5-point dogs at home, right? Like that's probably best case, probably going to be around a touchdown underdog. And certainly up in Green Bay, they're going to be 8-point underdogs, 9-point underdogs. Golly, might even be double-digit underdogs. Is that Steelers game, that first Steelers game, is that at home or is it in Pittsburgh? Do you know that off the top of my head? Someone let us know.
Let's see, we got the schedule here.
Okay. So, yeah, we go at home against Pittsburgh. That probably Thursday Night Football, short week. Mike Tomlin versus Zac Taylor on a short week after probably getting bullied up in Green Bay. And, yeah, you got to figure out a way to win 3 games before that bye week on November 9th. You got the Jets and you got Chicago, which Chicago looked great yesterday. But I'm really worried about
these next 3 weeks, man. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah. And Denver's 1-2. It's not like they're world beaters and we're 7.5-point dogs. Bo Nix hasn't looked great. But we don't match up well at all with Detroit or Green Bay. So they're going to be, touchdown underdogs. So, for the sake of not being hypocritical, which, if you watch enough of my takes, you probably see that I am at times, as we all are. We're all hypocrites in certain aspects of our lives. When we won week 1, I said, and I meant it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if you win 2-0, 3-2, or 80-0. A win is a win. And at the end of the year, you don't even think about how you won games. Yeah, there might be like a huge win that you had against, a Super Bowl contender, like the Browns winning yesterday against the Packers. They'll talk about that win for a while. And rightfully so. We did the same thing when we beat the Chiefs in back-to-back regular seasons. Like, those are huge wins. I remember when Joe beat the 49ers, and they looked like world beaters 2 years ago. That was a huge win. Beating the Bills. Like, those are huge wins. But at the end of the year, they count as a 1 in the win column. And I said, I don't care. A win's a win. But here we are. Worst loss in franchise history. And at the end of it, the Bengals are 2-1. This loss that we suffered yesterday counts the exact same as the loss the Baltimore Ravens took on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago, where they dominated for 3.5 quarters and then just somehow lost the game. It counts the same as what the Packers suffered yesterday to the Cleveland Browns, where they're kicking to win the game, and it gets blocked, returned, and here goes the other way. Or even, I believe it was who the Bucs play, the Jets yesterday, where they block a field goal, return it to the house to take the lead, and then they end up losing. Like, they all count the same. It's one in the loss column. A win's a win, a loss is a loss. So I'm trying not to be hypocritical when I say that. But we also know that these are human beings. And when things unravel like they did yesterday, you can kind of sense how it can unravel for weeks to come. You can negate it all. You can negate it all with a win next Monday in Denver. We won't even think about it anymore. We literally won't even remember this Vikings game if they go and, as 7.5-point underdogs, beat Sean Payton and Bo Nix in the Mile High City. Jake Browning's been really good on primetime. I think it was a Monday Night Football game when they beat the Jags after looking terrible the week prior against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you can forget it all one week, but you could also, on the other side of that coin, you can also sense how you suffer another bad loss, those personalities in the locker room start to rear their head. And that's where a head coach can, make your salary, is if you're able to keep everyone locked in. You can keep moving forward. You hope that they're professionals, but there's also, you see it around the NFL every single year where when things start heading south, you put a microphone in front of these athletes' mouths, and they start to, sound off against the organization or the head coach or the quarterback, and things can get sideways in a hurry. And you pray that what I said last week about Zac Taylor, to where his teams continue to fight, and they obviously have great chemistry, and that's where he makes his money, right? That's why you think, if you think highly of Zac Taylor at all, it's because of that. You pray that's the right take and not the one that I gave today where his team just completely folded on him in the second half. And I get it. You're down 38-3, 31-3. I don't know how you can find the spark. I listen to former Off the Bench host, Tom Brenneman's show sometimes on his morning show. He takes over the morning show on 700 WLW. And he had Tim McGee on last week after Joe Burrow went down. Tim McGee's been on Off the Bench plenty of time, former Bengal, NFL player. And Tom asked him, point blank, they said, hey, when the best player in your locker room, the guy who everyone kind of goes around, right, Joe Burrow, when he goes down, he's kind of your lighthouse. He's kind of your spark. He's kind of hey, as long as we got Joe, we're okay. When he goes down, and it's seeming unlikely. I'm staying optimistic on that injury, but I think we all pretty much understand that 3 months is a pretty optimistic outlook for that injury on coming back middle of December. That's incredibly optimistic. When he goes down, what does a team say? Well, what are you feeling as an athlete in that locker room? And Tim McGee point blank was like, when you're asked about it, you say all the right things. You go, oh, we just got to, 1 foot in front of another. Everyone's got to make one extra play. Everyone's got to, do a little bit more. Everyone's got to do their job, and we'll be just fine. But when you go home at night and you're talking to your wife, girlfriend, spouse, whatever, when you're sitting alone and thinking about it, you understand that things are bleak. You understand, golly, I don't know how this turns around. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what those, the 53 men on the Cincinnati Bengals roster is feeling right now. Is that, you win a few games and you get some excitement going in, but this could get bad. This can get bad in a hurry. Stone, are you choosing to be more pessimistic about the Bengals or more optimistic about the Reds going forward? Because you got kind of a Harvey Dent right now, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that does that reference?
Nope, right over the head.
Okay.
Yep.
He's Two-Face and Batman.
Okay. Yeah.
There you
go. I got you. Yeah. No. Today I'm definitely gonna be more optimistic about the Reds than pessimistic about the Bengals. We got to be pessimistic about the Bengals after that performance that you saw. Again, it's not like you lost by 10 points. Like, you got blown out completely, not competitive whatsoever. I think the Bengals will bounce back fine. Is that going to result in wins? We'll see. But as far as usually when teams in the NFL get blown out like that, they usually respond the next week. I've never seen a team quit on Zac Taylor. They did in the second half of this game, so that certainly is a concern. But I think they will be back and playing hard against Denver, and I think it'll be a competitive game. Doesn't mean they win. I don't know. They've got all types of issues. Even if you take the effort stuff out of play, they got all types of issues there. We'll break down all that stuff later on. But, yeah, for now, you got to be more optimistic about the Reds. We're sitting here on September 22nd with 2 series left, and at the season end of the day, they have a playoff spot. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And, yeah, they're in the driver's seat right now, and we're certainly fired up about that. But the Bengals, lots of things to fix, lots of reason to be kind of down the dumps if you're the Cincinnati Bengals and a Cincinnati Bengal fan. But I think you'll see this team come out with a lot of fight next week. And if not, then you have real issues because we sat up here and we talked about, I think Zac Taylor will be back. He'll be fine. The one thing that can't happen is his team, they can't quit on him. And obviously you have a winning record still. And you got the whole season ahead of you. So we'll see if that becomes an issue again. I get it. They're professional athletes, but they're humans at the same time. You just kind of saw some laziness there with the tackling in the second half, kind of just lowering the shoulder, not exactly wrapping up on stuff. They're humans. I get it, but that can't happen at all going forward. And if it happens again, that's a major, major red flag.
I'll leave you with this. So I asked you, I was like, hey, are you going to be more optimistic about the Reds? And the clear answer is you should. If you ever get a chance to be optimistic or pessimistic, take optimism. Positivity normally wins in this world. But just to show you where I was, how dark of a place I was in yesterday after the Bengals loss. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall before the game. If they lost this game, I was hoping it would be a better performance. But if they lose the next 2 games, and you're like, man, oh man, we get to that bye week. What's our record look like? I started, and maybe I'll do it later on in this week, maybe not. I started floating around Joe Burrow trade packages to my friends. That's how bad I was, Stone. That's how down bad I was. The me who when I think of myself as one of the more optimistic sports fans that I know of. I was floating around. What can we get for Joe Burrow if we just tear this thing down to the studs and start it on over? Golly, win next Monday, so I don't have to think about that anytime soon again. Stone, thank you so much for producing.
Yes, sir.
You want to give a teaser for the Stone Shield show starting up here in a couple minutes?
Well, obviously, we're going to talk about the Bengals. We're going to break down all the things that went wrong. There's some notable takeaways as far as snap counts as well. Logan Wilson getting phased out a little bit there at the linebacker spot. They say it's just because they're trying to protect him, keep him healthy. He was ticked off about it after the game, so we'll break that down. Got to obviously talk about the offensive line. There's 2 starters on this team, one on the offensive line and one in their secondary who are paid to be really good players, and they both absolutely stink. Going to be breaking down those 2 and also spend some time talking about the Cincinnati Reds, of course, because we're all fired up about that. We'll go around the NFL a little bit, any major takeaways, and also a good week of college football as well. But I know you don't really appreciate that sport, but that's okay. You'll come around.
Speaking of college football, the funniest thing happened yesterday, and this is the final. I like telling stories, and Everett brought up a really good point in the chat. I'm not going to bring it up on the show, but you just brought up a really good point in the chat, which is where I'm at going forward with this Bengals team. But so it's no secret that I dislike college football, at least in some capacity. I understand that when the thing that you guys try to sell me on college football, which is, this atmosphere and, the Tennessee-Alabama game is the one that I always bring up a couple weeks ago. And as Reed Rule here at Headlines is showing his red stuff in the mirror, in the window and distracting me. But when college football is at its best, it's the best sport on the planet. When it's a back-and-forth overtime game and the fans are super into it, and it's a beautiful display of Americana. Like, if you love this country you see that, it's hard to deny how great college football is. But my take is always, like, that happens like once a year, a couple times a year. You always tell me. Like, I don't know how many other sports they constantly have to go like, oh, we've got a bad slate this week, or hey, we've got this week in college football. It's going to be a great slate, and I'll sit down and watch the games. I promise there won't be too many good ones. But the story I was saying was yesterday when I'm down bad, I'm sitting here doing the watch along, and I'm talking into the mic like this, and it's just a terrible time, and I've just got to get to the end, get through the 4 quarters, quitting on the team, just quitting on the Bengals, just like the players did. Sir Boy Wonder, one of the biggest Chatterbox fans, gets in the chat to clown my college football take, and what he's using as proof is how the Bengals were playing that day. I was like, are you dunking on me by dunking on your own favorite NFL team? He was like, I'm told the NFL is always great games. What's going on here, Reed? This is man, I would rather watch college. I was like, what are we doing? You're dunking on your own team to prove a point? And it was a bad point. I mean, look at every game yesterday. There was blocked field goals galore. If you're watching Red Zone, God bless you, because you're tuned into a treat yesterday. All right, Trace Fowler should be back tomorrow here on the show. Hoping he's back because hopefully he can shed some more positive light on the Cincinnati Reds as they go for a 3-game series in Pittsburgh. Biggest series, packed GABP. Hopefully you guys got your tickets. The Stone Shield Show coming up.
Here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on a Monday. Appreciate everybody hanging out. We are back here at the show. Had to cancel Friday's show last week. Had some power outages here in the building, but we are back. Our 3rd week of the Stone Shield Show, week number 3. Really excited to get it underway. Plenty of stuff to talk about, obviously, on today's show. The Bengals, well, they suffered their worst loss in the history of the franchise, a 48-10 drubbing in Minneapolis, Minnesota against the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think a lot of us had a ton of confidence going into that game, but to say we expected it to go that way certainly couldn't be further from the truth, as that obviously was a complete embarrassment, and probably not going to hit the panic button per se at this point, considering you still have a record over 500, but you're at least looking at the panic button. You're kind of staring over, peeking at it, saying, well, if we see one more of those, we definitely will be pressing it fully. But 2-1, plenty to break down about that game. I know a lot of people probably flipped it off once halftime ended up rolling around and didn't even tune in for the second half. But still some things in the second half that you can take away from the game. Obviously, if you know me, if you watch the show, if you watched any of my previous stuff on the internet in the past, I always defend Zac Taylor and go to bat for Zac Taylor, but his team, one, didn't show up ready to play. That is a knock on the head coach. If you had to, obviously lots of people to blame, but if you have to pick on one person there when the team doesn't show up to play, it's the head coach first and foremost, and the team borderline quit in the second half. They're professionals, I understand that, but also they're human beings. And, some stuff you saw from a tackling perspective, just kind of lowering the shoulder, running into guys, not necessarily wrapping up when it came to tackling the ball carrier. Not good. Not good at all for Zac Taylor, not good at all for the Cincinnati Bengals. And they have a long week, an extra day, obviously, before they have to worry about going to Denver and playing the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Lots that needs to be cleaned up. We'll also talk about the Cincinnati Reds on today's show. Typically this time of year when you're kind of late September, right, the Reds really are kind of just an afterthought. They're kind of eliminated at this point, and you're fully all in talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Reds have saved us here on a Monday based on what transpired over the weekend. You take 2 out of 3 on the road in St. Louis. You come home and play the Chicago Cubs, a really, really good baseball team, and you wax them. You take all 4 games. Biggest takeaway from the series, you won 2 of those games by a score of 1-0. I didn't think that was something that was possible for this organization to pull that off. The bats, we've talked about it all year offensively, haven't been up to snuff, haven't been close. You haven't found ways to score runs in lots of games, but shoot, when you have a pitching staff like the Cincinnati Reds team does, a bullpen that has produced really, really well of late, and a manager that right now, over the past week or so, is pushing all the right buttons, and Tito Francona, it results in a lot of wins. And if the season were to end last night, the Cincinnati Reds would be in the playoffs. How unbelievable is that? With 6 games to go, the Redlegs would be competing in the postseason. Haven't seen it, obviously, in years. And obviously, you got to take it a game at a time. Lots ahead of them as they have 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then they go to Milwaukee to finish out the season against a team that has owned you for as long as I can remember. And you'll probably have to win that series. Definitely will at least have to win a game if you're going to get in the postseason. 6 really, really exciting games of baseball ahead of us. And the Reds are kind of, shouldering some of the burden here. I think in this town, yeah, we're ticked off about the Bengals. Yeah, we're frustrated, disappointed, all those things. But there's plenty of good stuff to talk about with the Cincinnati Reds. We'll see. Obviously, people have their doubts that they'll be able to continue this as we progress. And kind of just feels like it would be right on key for the Reds to stumble against Pittsburgh and put themselves behind the 8 ball once more. But currently in the driver's seat and have an opportunity to make the playoffs. Pretty exciting stuff for the Redlegs. We'll talk about them on today's show. Also, we'll go around the NFL as we typically do. Some takeaways throughout NFL football this week. There was some good games. I think overall it really wasn't that great of a weekend in the NFL, but there were some really exciting games. Reed Mouse alluded to it on Off the Bench. Lots of blocked kicks that certainly swayed games from one side to another. Had our best bets of the weekend. Obviously, as I mentioned, show got canceled Friday. We still put them out on social media. 2-4. Not our best performance there. We'll keep it pushing, though. We'll keep being honest, transparent with our record where it sits, and we'll try to certainly improve off of that. But the Rams game, Rams plus 3.5. If anyone watched that game, that is just probably the worst beat of the season, and maybe it will be once the season is all said and done. I think it was a 26-7 lead for the Los Angeles Rams in that football game, and then obviously Philly comes back on 4th down. They score, they take the lead, but Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, that Rams offense, an opportunity to go down the field, kick the winning field goal. They do get down the field. They do put themselves in field goal range, and it's blocked. And it gets returned for a touchdown as time expires, and they don't even cover the plus 3.5. Just an absolutely devastating beat in that football game. But we'll keep it pushing. 2-4 this week, so we slip a little bit below 500. Should have been 3-3 again this week, but we'll rehash that at the end of today's show as well. Also, solid week of college football. Not really in a spot where there was a ton of high-profile big games. That will change this weekend here on Saturday. Ohio State, Washington, banger. Oregon, Penn State, banger. Alabama, Georgia, banger. So plenty of great games on the college football slate this weekend. Monday Night Football for the Bengals. Series for the Reds. Off night tonight. 3 games against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're right in the thick of the playoff race, have a playoff spot if the season were to end right now. Exciting stuff going on around the sports world. But always appreciate if you like the stream, hit that subscribe button, subscribe to the podcast, all those types of things. We certainly appreciate it. All of our content will be out on YouTube. Obviously, you can watch the entirety of the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. That'll be up 15-20 minutes after the show. Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it, it'll be there. You can take in our show if you didn't miss if you missed parts of it, chunks of it, whatever. You're only able to come in for the last 30 minutes, had to leave after the first 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. Also off the bench, Reed Mouse did a tremendous job today. Trace Fowler probably will be back tomorrow. That certainly will be must-see TV, so to speak, there with the Reds in the thick of things. They'll play tomorrow. Trace will have you covered on Off the Bench tomorrow. I'm sure he'll have plenty of exciting things to say. Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, they went live last night. That was an awesome live stream. And, of course, they'll have you covered tomorrow with a pregame show. And they'll be live in the 9th inning as well and after the game against Pittsburgh. Brady Singer on the bump for that. 3-2-1 night at the ballpark. Fill up the stadium, fill up GABP, pack GABP, kind of the mantra here. Hunter Green threw a gem earlier in the Cubs series, and one hitter, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he kind of said after the game, hey, we needed to be filled up a little bit more. And I think the city's going to respond in a big way, and I think they'll be out in full force against the Pirates as the Reds try to lock up a playoff spot. As always, subscribe, like the stream. We appreciate it. And get in the comment section there as well. And also, as I typically mention, we'll have some segments that will go up on our YouTube page throughout the remainder of the day. Mondays are pretty busy for us here at Chatterbox Sports, but we will still have some of those clips up. Be sure to check those out, and you will see our show begin to develop a little bit more of a presence on social media as well. We've got a great social team here that helps us get some clips out, but we do have a Twitter page for the Stone Shield Show. You'll see more clips over there. Maybe by the end of this week, definitely next week for sure. We'll see if we can work that this week, but on the Chatterbox page as well, plenty of great stuff as far as social media content there for you guys. We appreciate all the support, and here we go. Week 3 of the Stone Shield Show. Pretty fired up about that. All right, let's talk Cincinnati Bengals. 48-10 on the road in Minneapolis. And you really never really had an opportunity to even get going in that game because they were just on you from the jump. Defensively, obviously Wentz and company get the football first for Minnesota in the ball game, and you had 2 penalties there on that drive. I think it was a total of 25 yards. I didn't really get the block that they called on Dax Hill. Zac Taylor obviously was irate about that as well, but those 2 penalties are really the reason you gave up that touchdown, and quickly before you can even blink, you're down 7-0 on the road in a hostile environment. Obviously not an ideal start, but offensively all types of issues with this football team. No Joe Burrow. Superman is no longer here. He's no longer there to save you. So if you do fundamental things wrong, you're not going to be in a position where you can recover. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean not picking up positive yardage on first down. I mean not staying ahead of the sticks, progressing in the right direction, having negative plays, giving up sacks, right? Turning the football over. My goodness. 5-0 in the turnover department as it relates to this game between the Bengals and the Minnesota Vikings. I don't care where you're at. I don't care who your quarterback is. I don't care who you're playing. If you give up 5 turnovers, if you allow the other team to force 5 turnovers and you can't force any yourself, you're going to get blown out. That's just life in the NFL, life in the professional football league, the National Football League. Here's a stat for you. Paul Dehner Jr. had this of The Athletic. This century, teams that have a turnover margin of +5 are 108, 3-1. 86 of those wins were by double digits, and more than half were by at least 20. That's what 5 turnovers looks like. It looks like a one-sided football game, and it looks like a blowout. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, in the past, when the Bengals have lost the turnover battle, Zac Taylor pretty much goes up to the podium, and they ask him all these questions immediately following the game. What went wrong? Why'd you do this? Why'd your team play this way? And he always goes, well, turnovers. We lost the turnover battle. That's the reason why. And I kind of knew that he was going to go to the podium and say the same exact thing, but I agree with him, right? 5-0. That's not even close. Not even in the ballpark of being something where you can possibly be successful when you give up 5 turnovers in the game. The first one, the Jake Browning interception, and also 5 turnovers in the game, and you allow 2 defensive touchdowns from the same guy, Isaiah Rodgers. Congratulations to him. Have a ball game, young fella. He was tremendous. But the first throw from Jake Browning, it didn't seem like Zac Taylor was too ticked off about the throw. It seemed like there were some people that are like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Just great play by Harrison Smith. He's able to reach back, get a paw on it. It deflects. It ends up getting picked off. But the reality is this. When you're trying to, clearly the play had broken down. Clearly he had held onto the football too long. And he also took a massive shot on that play. And he also has to understand that if they go to a next quarterback, unless they trade for Jameis Winston or something crazy, right? If they have to go to their third string, whether it be, obviously Rippon was the guy yesterday, whether that be Clifford or Mike White going forward, this team is cooked. You're not going to have a success story in the NFL when you get to your third quarterback. Jake Browning has to understand that, and he has to understand he can't take shots like that. But he took a massive shot on the first interception, deflected, up in the air, gets returned for a touchdown. That's got to be something where he throws it away, all right? He checks it down. You can't do that as a backup quarterback, kind of throwing back across your body a little bit against a crazy good defense. Minnesota, you're in a deficit, right? You just can't do that. You have to find ways, especially early in the game, to just keep your team in the ball game. And all of these turnovers, by the way, in plus territory for Cincinnati. So they're moving the football on these drives. Maybe not all of them, but I believe most of them, this one certainly was, in plus territory, having an opportunity to go down, put points on the board, right? And then you turn the football over. And it's just a massive, massive momentum swing. The fumbles. I'm going to say it's a fluke situation as it relates to the fumbles. Jamar Chase, Noah Fant, Samaje Perine, none of these guys have a history of having fumble issues. They've all played a lot of football, obviously have a couple of fumbles apiece throughout their careers here to this point. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, this is something that's going to happen again, or the Bengals have a fumbling issue, whatever. It's just unfortunate that that's how the game transpired and that Minnesota was able to make some of those plays and land on those fumbles. Chase Brown also had a fumble that he was able to land on himself. When you have 5 turnovers, you're never going to win. That's just the reality of the situation. And the second interception from Browning was terrible. It was absolutely awful. They were down 41-3, I think, at the time when he makes that throw in the second half, late in the third quarter. But I have no idea what he was seeing. His footwork in the pocket was awful. He wasn't squared up to his target. He was kind of off his back foot, falling away, had no confidence, and then just kind of threw it. Gesicki was sort of in the area. But, I just no clue what was going through his head. Again, you're getting blown out on the road. You're just like, we got to force something. But you can't do that if you're Jake Browning. And as Reed pointed out, on off the bench, since Jake Browning took over as the starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow went down, yeah, they won the first game against Jacksonville, but 8 turnovers since he has been the quarterback. I get 3 of them were fumbles, and he only technically is responsible for 5 with those interceptions. But that's just not even close. That's not even close to getting it done, and he has got to be better. We talk about, he's got these weapons. Zac Taylor, he's proven that he can, win some games. It's a defense that is improving, by the way. We'll get to them in a little bit. But I think, for the most part, I think you got to feel better about the defense this week than you did after the Jacksonville game last week. But your quarterback has to play better. I get he's a backup. I get he has the limited reps. But he cannot be putting the football in harm's way. Those 2 interceptions are unacceptable. Completed 19 passes, but only 140 yards. I get he's not getting a lot of help from his run game. Talk about that in a second as well, and his offensive line, but he has to do a better job of taking care of the football and taking what the defense gives him and finding ways to get yardage, right? The Bengals are going to have to win field position battles in these games. They're going to have to win the field position battles. They're going to have to win the turnover battles. It's life with a backup quarterback. You have to do all the little things right if you're going to have success with a backup quarterback. And Cincinnati, over the past few years, has proven that they typically do not do the little things right, and they're reliant on Joe Burrow being able to overcome those things with his greatness. Well, you don't have Joe Burrow anymore. Jake Browning, one of the best backups in the league. He's the backup for a reason, right? He doesn't have that ability to go in there and overcome everything, right? And everyone talks about, you got T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, like, he'll be just fine, get it to your playmakers. Playing professional quarterback at an elite level is really, really hard. Joe Burrow makes it look really, really easy. It's not easy, right? If you take a look at other teams across the league, you'll understand that. We've been spoiled here in Cincinnati with elite quarterback play since Joe Burrow has been here. Obviously, he has had his fair share of injuries and has struggled to stay on the football field. All right? But playing quarterback at the professional level, at a really good level at the professional level, is really, really hard. And you saw that with Jake Browning in this game, and you saw it with him really, in the Jacksonville game there as well, as he struggled throwing the football to the other team. So he's got to be better if the Bengals are going to get to where they want to get to. Good news is he's proven he can be competent in the past. He was not competent this game against Minnesota. Challenge is going to be tough against Denver, too, next week on Monday Night Football. Not as chaotic with some of the exotic stuff that, Minnesota and Brian Flores do. Really, really good defense in Denver. Really, really good defense. Field position, turnover battle, all those things are going to be very, very important for Jake Browning on Monday night. And it's probably going to be a game where you're sitting there saying, how can we find a way to stay in the game till it's late, and then maybe we'll make the play late when it matters. That's the kind of game you're going to find yourself in on Monday. He's got to stop being reckless with the football, and he's got to find a way, and this isn't Jake Browning, but they got to find a way to run the football as well. Let's talk a little bit about the run game. Chase Brown, 10 carries in the ball game yesterday for a grand total of 3 yards, an average of 0.3 yards per rush. Chase Brown's getting banged on from a national perspective. When people talk about the Cincinnati running game, say, I heard Rex Ryan, who's always, firing off hot takes, whatever. Oh, they got a running back. He's not very good at all. Chase Brown's really good, actually. We've seen that. He has proven that, but Cincinnati does not know how to run the football at all. Now, part of the reason why that is the case is they bring in these offensive linemen that their specialty is supposed to be pass blocking, because this is supposed to be Joe Burrow's offensive line. Now, some people would sit there and say, well, they were brought in for pass blocking, and they can't even do that. Fair, but they really can't run block, right? And that's what they were being asked to do here with the backup quarterback. Their philosophy offensively has totally shifted since Joe Burrow has gone down, and that's just kind of the reality. It needed to shift. But so many people were sitting there saying, they have a similar play style, Burrow and Browning, it'll be kind of seamless with the transition from one to the next. No, he's a backup quarterback, and you need a run game, and you have an offensive line that can't run block. That is a serious, serious issue. Orlando Brown Jr., he's getting paid the big bucks. He's supposed to be your bookend left tackle. He stinks. He's not good this year. He has not been good. Did he have good parts of last year before he was hurt? Yes, he did. But this year, he has been getting cooked at that left tackle spot, and it has cost you. He is giving up way too many pressures and way too many sacks. Ted Karras, we all love him. At that center spot, captain of this football team, really good football player. Second time that he has been extended here. Everybody in the city loves him. He's got to be better. He's got to be better at that center spot and finding a way to create some lanes in the run game. Your guards, right? Dalton Reisner. I get it. You signed him off the street. You had the injury to Lucas Patrick. He's not put in the best necessarily position to succeed after being off the street. Had one padded practice before he was thrown in the game against Cleveland. Again, guy that's not known for run blocking. He's here because he can pass block, allegedly. Supposed to be able to do that. All right? Well, he got benched, and I get he had a calf. Taylor after the game was like, yeah, he probably could have came back in the game, but whatever. No, they wanted to give Jalen Rivers a shot at that rookie to see if they could perhaps run the football a little bit better. Obviously, that did not work either. We'll see going forward what exactly they'll do at that guard spot. All right, because if you have two rookies starting, right, with Ted Karras in the middle of them, Fairchild and Rivers, you don't feel comfortable about doing that. But then again, it's not Joe Burrow back there anymore. It's Jake Browning. If you have to go with two rookies, maybe that's what they'll have to do. We'll see. Amarius Mims, I love Amarius Mims. He's going to be just fine, but he's got to be better as well. And Zac Taylor also said after the game, they got to figure out who they're going to run behind. All right. Now, did that mean we'll see if we'll end up going with Rivers over Dalton Reisner? I don't know. We'll see. But clearly they have nobody to run behind. And it's not even competitive. Like, it's not like, they're at least getting 2 or 3 yards. No, like they would give it to Chase Brown and he would run to the line of scrimmage and he would be tackled at the line of scrimmage or a yard or two behind the line of scrimmage. It is putrid. I haven't seen a run game this bad. I don't think ever in all my years of watching football, this run game for Cincinnati is awful. And if you remember back to week 1, that first half against Cleveland, we were all excited because it's like, wow, Bengals, obviously they're having trouble scoring a ton of points against Cleveland, what have you, but they were in full control of that game, and they were running the football with Chase Brown. Like, wow, Chase Brown, the Bengals are running the football. Shoot, if they can do this all year, this is going to be awesome. And then the second half came around. Couldn't run the football. Couldn't run the football all day against Jacksonville. And then it snowballs here, and it's the worst it's been here in Week 3 against the Minnesota Vikings. haven't been able to run the football whatsoever. 4 carries, 21 yards for Samaje Perine. That's 5.3 a carry. He's kind of a bigger guy. Maybe can fight through some of those tackles initially at the line of scrimmage. We'll see if he gets more carries, but he also had the fumble there as well. And against Jacksonville, he had the fumble on the kick return that he was able to fall on, but Samaje Perine got to do a better job at holding on to football. But maybe he'll get more carries going forward. Taj Brooks got to play. He got his first 5 carries as a professional. 5 carries, 17 yards, 3.4. Do they go with him a little bit more? We'll see. But again, I firmly don't think this is a Chase Brown issue whatsoever. This is an offensive line coaching issue as far as it relates to not being able to run the football. Chase Brown has proven that he's got great speed, he's got great quickness, he's got great vision, all the necessary things that need to happen if you're playing the running back position at the professional level. He can do all those things, but he hasn't obviously had any holes to run through, and this run game is the worst in the National Football League. You couple that with a backup quarterback that's turning the football over, and you get 48-10. That's kind of how you get to this spot. Defensively, let's talk about these guys for a little bit. You look at the scoreboard, 48-10, you think, well, defense must be awful. 2 defensive touchdowns for Minnesota. Isaiah Rodgers, he had the interception, the pick 6, and the fumble return for a touchdown off Noah Fant. Fant leaves that game with a concussion, by the way. We'll see his status throughout this week, see if he could perhaps be available for Monday Night Football or not. But defensively, I thought they settled down after that first drive. Again, they gave up all the 2 penalties that first drive, and that really kind of prevented them from having success defensively there. But the offense put them in bad spots, obviously giving up the touchdowns, and seemingly felt like great field position for Wentz in that Minnesota offense. You knew O'Connell was going to come prepared, and you knew Wentz was going to be competent. Was he great? No. But he was competent out there, and obviously he was able to lead his team to victory in this football game. Logan Wilson didn't play as much as we are accustomed to seeing him playing. As I pull up these snap counts here real quick. 42 snaps defensively, only 70%. Usually he's out there for the majority of the snaps defensively. You saw more Barrett Carter. You saw more rotation there at that linebacker spot. And after the game, Logan Wilson was pretty ticked off about it. Obviously, said all the right things as far as being a good teammate, what have you. But he clearly was frustrated with the rotation. Now, apparently, it was a position coach decision. The linebackers coach for Cincinnati didn't want him out there as much because they're trying to protect him and keep him healthy. That is the rationale that they gave after the football game, and we'll see. But you had more rotation there at that linebacker spot with Barrett Carter. I thought Demetrius Knight had a solid game for Cincinnati, a rookie second-round pick out of South Carolina. There was a play early in the game where Golden kind of sent him on a pressure, and that made the whole play blow up. And then Jenkins was able to get a sack along with Myles Murphy. You had 3 sacks in the football game for Cincinnati, and none of them were Trey Hendrickson. So I think that's positive. This front was able to apply some pressure to Minnesota. Now, their offensive line, not their strong suit. They've struggled. They've had injuries, situations that they're trying to deal with, so far this season. But you had 3 sacks, sack and a half for Jenkins, half a sack for Myles Murphy, which was impressive, and then a sack for Joseph Osai as well. My takeaway early on in the game was, oh, wow, hello, Myles Murphy. Good to meet you. We haven't seen you yet, and you played solid in the game. I thought Myles Murphy was pretty solid in the game. I think my favorite play wasn't the half a sack, but actually it was a 3rd and medium, I think, and Wentz was trying to escape the pocket out to his left. And that was a play defensively that Cincinnati, the quarterback, is able to pick up the first down 10 out of 10 times these past few years with the Cincinnati Bengals. And Wentz, obviously not known for being a runner, but he's a solid athlete back there, and he can still move around a little bit. Myles Murphy closed the distance in a blink of an eye and was able to bring down Wentz on a 3rd down. That was a huge play from Myles Murphy. So obviously no Shamar Stewart with the ankle. More time for Myles Murphy, and I thought he did a solid job, and that was one of his best games. Honestly, probably his best game as a Cincinnati Bengal in his professional career here in Cincinnati. So that was promising. We'll see if that was a fluke or if he can build off that and be better. But the pressure from Jenkins, Osai, and Murphy, that gives you a little bit of sign of optimism for Cincinnati. But the tackling in the second half was terrible. And I think that kind of shifts back to the head coach because it kind of was a lack of effort situation there. Now, when you're down as much as they were down at halftime, that's just, I mean, that's kind of how it is. It kind of takes the wind out of your sails, right? Especially when you know that you don't have Joe Burrow out there that could possibly hang 35 points in the second half and get you back in the game. You don't have that. You have Jake Browning, and I think the team kind of, they quit a little bit, to be honest with you. And it's hard. I don't know how you kind of don't there because you're probably sitting there saying, how can we just get to Denver healthy, right? I mean, in the second half, it's like, yeah, we can do things better. We can improve, try to be better, get some more good stuff on tape. But the emphasis also is, hey, we need to somehow be healthy going into Denver and kind of flush this one and move on. Still have a 2-1 record, which obviously Cincinnati does. Geno Stone is terrible. All right, he's horrible at that safety position. Missed tackles for him, being in the wrong spot for him. Continued issues that we saw from him last year. That safety position, we talked about how it went neglected this offseason. I thought it was going to cost Cincinnati, and here we are. It kind of has cost them. Jordan Battle's been really good for the Bengals. Geno Stone has not. I don't know if you make a switch to Tyson Anderson. I don't know if you try to, pick up somebody, trade for somebody. Obviously, Cincinnati's probably not going to do that. Tyson Anderson's probably the only guy that, realistically you can throw in there and replace Geno Stone. But I've kind of seen enough as it relates to Geno Stone. Those are the two starters that I kind of teased on off the bench. Geno Stone and Orlando Brown Jr., two guys that you're paying, two guys that are supposed to really help you win football games, and both of them have absolutely stunk this season for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, Geno Stone, it was an issue last year, and it's carried over to this year, and it certainly has not been good enough. But overall, defensively, I feel better, actually, despite giving up all those points, than I did against Jacksonville. Thought they really settled down at times against the backup quarterback in Carson Wentz. So we'll see as the quarterback play gets better and better. You got Nix, who's a little bit better, but has obviously struggled this season. Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, you're gonna face some good quarterbacks here as we progress over the next couple of weeks, and we'll really see what this defense is made out of. But defensively, I feel okay if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals that you've gotten a little bit better. You're clearly better than you were last year, and you could still win some games with this defense. But you're gonna need them to force turnovers, something they were able to do the first 2 weeks, weren't able to do this week. Again, you can't be a team that's so overly turnover reliant, all right? That's not a system that's going to be effective for you, right? You can't just say, we're going to create turnovers. There's some games you're not going to create any turnovers. Obviously, you didn't create any yesterday in Minneapolis, and that was a big reason you lost the game. But I think defensively, you've taken steps in the right direction, and you can still win some games with this defense. Offensively, got to figure out the run game, right? Got to figure out the run game. Got to understand that you have to be able to run the football if you're even going to have a prayer with the backup quarterback. And Jake Browning's it was bad. All right, he's been bad since he took over in the Jacksonville game. Had the great drive, got lucky with the PI on Travis Hunter there. Was able to win that game. Credit to him for that. But he's got to be a lot better because if he plays like this, they can't win football games. Now, the key here is you can't let this thing snowball on you. Right? If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, this can't turn into more than one loss. And Reed talked about this off the bench, and I want to reiterate this as well. You won the first 2 games of the year, but it was ugly. You lost yesterday, and it was really ugly. But at the end of the day, you have a 2-1 record. That's just the reality of the situation. All right? It's one loss, right? What Reed said on off the bench. The Ravens game against the Buffalo Bills in week 1, they played really well in that game offensively, and then they blew it late, and they lost the game. Still lost. Goes down exactly the same as what went down in Minneapolis yesterday for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a loss. 2-1's your record. Your schedule gets really, really difficult. It was crucial that you win those first 2 games. Again, if Cincinnati would have dropped one of those 2 games, Burrow goes down, season's over. Season's not over yet. All right? 2-1, and you got to play Denver on Monday night. You have an extra day to prepare for that. It's a Denver team, by the way, that's going to be really hungry. They're going to be really hungry to go out there and do some good things because they have a 1-2 record. They feel like they've underperformed at this point. Bo Nix hasn't been that good. That offense hasn't been as good as they expected. So they're going to be really hungry. Prime time at home. It's going to be another raucous environment, and they kept saying that yesterday. Oh, it's so loud in Minneapolis at this, Bengals Vikings game. I get it, but it's life on the road in the NFL. All right, you got to be able to adapt, and you got to be able to take some of that momentum away. That's just all about. It's a part of playing on the road in the National Football League. Bengals clearly did not handle that there as well, and I think the Bengals are going to respond. I've been kind of negative, obviously, here to this point. I don't really think when you're talking about the Bengals right now, there's much to be positive about. But I think usually in the NFL, when you see a team get blasted like that, and the Bengals got blasted, they usually respond the next week. They don't always win, but it's competitive. It's a close game. They kind of play with their hair on fire a little bit. And I think you're going to see that on Monday nights. And if they can limit the turnovers, they're going to have a chance in that game to win late. 7.5. I mean, I'm definitely on the Bengals as it relates to the side of that here at this point early in the week. We'll see how that line shifts. Again, it opened at 7.5. But I think you're going to see the team play with their hair on fire, play ticked off, make plays, create some turnovers, fly around on defense, and ultimately put themselves in a spot where they have a chance at the end of the game. But obviously they have to figure out how to run the football. Another important stat as well, when you have a backup quarterback, it's got to be third and medium, third and short to give him a chance. Bengals faced 7 third downs in the first half on Sunday. All but one were 7 yards or longer. They had a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 17, 3rd and 8 again, and 3rd and 5. None of those are short yardage, by the way. And only one, all but one, 7 yards or longer. With a backup quarterback, just can't do that. You have to find a way to move the sticks and find a way to get positive yardage on first down. Romo kept saying this, and I know Bengals fans don't really like Romo. I thought he was really good yesterday. I thought that was probably the best work that he had done on a Bengals game, despite the fact that obviously it was a blowout. But he's like, I would throw it on first down. Because they kept running it on first down. They would run into the, right into the line of scrimmage and right into the defensive front. And then it's, okay, it's 2nd and 10. And then they would try to throw it on 2nd down. Sometimes they would pick up some yards, sometimes not. Oh, it's 3rd and long. Where you're cooked on the road with a backup quarterback. So they got to figure out ways to have more success on first down. Again, they have to figure out how to run the football. But if it's not working, you got to find ways to have success on first down. All right, you can't just sit there and say, every first down we're going to run the football for no yards and be in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11 all day. It's not a formula for success. All right, Zac Taylor clearly trying to get the ball to Jamar Chase on the end-around stuff, the wide receiver screen stuff. Some of it works. A lot of it obviously did not work this week against Brian Flores. I think that's, Zac deserves a lot of credit for that because in the past it's been like, you have Jamar Chase and you won't give him the ball. They're trying to give him the ball. He hasn't necessarily been able to do a ton to this point with the football in his hands. But T. Higgins has to be more of a focal point for you. He absolutely has to be. Through 3 games, he has 7 receptions and 14 targets. You paid him the big bucks this offseason. He is that guy that's on your team that's supposed to be kind of like a steal, right? He's our wide receiver 2, but he's really a wide receiver 1. That's that guy in T. Higgins, and you're not throwing him the football. You have to find a way to get the ball in his hands. You have to at least take some shots down the football field with him, the size that he has, the frame in which he has. I know they went to, the one in the end zone that they weren't able to connect on, what have you. But T. Higgins has to be more of a focal point. And then Yoshi, what the heck's he doing? All right? Because he's still out there getting reasonable snap counts. He's still out there playing a lot offensively, and he's not doing anything. All right? So I think you're in a spot now as we look at this on the fly. Yeah, 35 snap counts, 35 snaps, 62% of the offensive snaps. He was out there. Mitchell Tinsley, only 7. I mean, if you're not going to get Yoshi involved and you're not going to give him the football and he's not getting open, I don't know what's going on there. I would guess that he's not getting open. Obviously, he's not the first read or the second read or maybe in a lot of cases the third read. But if he's doing nothing out there and is just kind of running around, you got to throw Tinsley in there or something. Somebody else that can catch the ball and be a threat for Cincinnati. Only 7 snaps for Tinsley. He was great in the preseason at the unbelievable catch against the Jaguars. Maybe it's time for him to get some more snaps out there as well. But you have to do a better job of getting the ball to T. Higgins and using him. He's really, really good. Even with Jake Browning, he can be really, really good. And then obviously you have to figure out how to run the football. Obviously, it's easier said than done. We can all sit here and say, oh, you can't run the football. You're not running the football well at all. You're the worst in the league, whatever. Well, how do you fix it? Yeah, I don't know because it's not like you can trade for a completely different offensive line, right? There's some things schematically you can obviously shift, but you got to figure out how to be competent on the ground or the season's over. This is the reality because if you can't improve on the ground and you have Jake Browning a backup quarterback, this thing is over, unfortunately. We'll see if Cincinnati can make the corrections and go from there. But obviously a very disappointing afternoon yesterday in Minneapolis. Worst loss in franchise history, 48-10 was the score of that football game. Bengals get blown out, but 2-1 record. We'll see what they can do on Monday night. All right, so that'll conclude our Bengals conversation for the day. Usually I'm more of a, positive guy when you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, but they did nothing well in that game, apart from play a little bit better defense, I thought. That's like the only positive thing that you could take away, in my opinion. I mean, you even had a shanked punt in the game. Like, come on. Literally nothing was going their way. I thought it had an opportunity to be a game where it wasn't very competitive and kind of was one-sided. I didn't think in my wildest dreams it would be 48-10, but brutal. Absolutely brutal. We did have a super chat earlier. I believe it came in on off the bench, but did want to show Ben Riley some love. He said, every gamer understands the concept of a wake-up call boss. The Vikings were ours. Time to lock in. I think it's well said, right? At some point, maybe Cincinnati needed to get whooped like this to kind of get them into shape. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they're going to respond. Teams in the NFL typically respond after getting beat like this. That's just kind of how it goes in this league. They're professionals out there. Their livelihoods on the line. Their families providing for their families. All that's on the line too. They've got pride. Like all these things exist. And it's not like you're 0-3, right? It's like, well, if you can find a way to steal one of these next couple games, I think you probably need to either beat Denver, or Detroit, probably, as you progress throughout the next couple of weeks. Like one of those probably needs to be a win for Cincinnati. And then are you able to, perhaps get Green Bay? Could that be a win? I mean, they look vulnerable against Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland's defense is much better than what you have here in Cincinnati, but you got to find a way before you get into the Jets and the Bears to pick up one or two. Definitely one, right? Denver, it was a battle last year, right? Maybe you can go in there, get a couple of turnovers, right? Execute. Like, all things are going to have to be really, really good without Joe Burrow. And it's a team that, unfortunately, has really messed up with the little things. They got to tackle well. They got to win the turnover battle. They got to be really good on special teams, all right? They got to have the ball bounce their way a few times. Obviously, they got to be able to run the football. Got to be better on 3rd and 4th down. Like, all these things have to improve without Joe Burrow. It's just kind of life with the backup quarterback, but you do have a 2-1 record here at this point. Schedule difficult. Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Pittsburgh. It's kind of a gauntlet, obviously, ahead of you, and we'll see how this team responds. And, I have a feeling they're going to respond well. And, I don't think we're going to be in a spot where it's like, oh, Zac Taylor, he's in trouble, right? But if they quit on him again, especially if it's more of a close game and they quit on him, or if they don't respond well to this loss, there might be issues. Just kind of reality as head coach in the NFL. That is what it is. Taylor understands that. He doesn't need us to sit up here and say that either. But they can't do that again, and they have to play tough, and they've got to be more resilient throughout the course of a ball game. How about the Cincinnati Reds? Last weekend, we spent some time talking about them. It's like, oh, we're going to go into this series against the Athletics, and we'll see what happens, but probably going to win the series, right? Win the series and really put ourselves in a good spot. And then they go out there and get swept. And, some people had quit on the Reds multiple times. Like, I'm in, a group chat with a bunch of Reds friends, and the group has, quit on them collectively, 8 different times throughout the year. But the Reds just won't go away. They keep coming back. So I haven't quit on them because, you just you learn at this point, hey, the Reds, they just don't go away. And that's just, I thought it would be premature to kind of put a fork in them, even after the series against the Athletics. But obviously they had a mountain to climb, and they've climbed it here to this point. You beat St. Louis 2 out of 3. and you sweep the Cubs. The Cubs are a really good team, and I get it. They're kind of, they're playing for seeding, whatever. Yeah, but they're kind of penciled in for me. Like I don't know if that Cubs team necessarily was playing with their hair on fire, right? Talking about the Bengals, how they need to do that. I didn't think the Cubs necessarily were doing that, but to go win 4 games at home with your season on the line, your ace goes out there and does tremendous work. Hunter Green, your whole staff does great. Your bullpen's great. Tito's hitting all the right buttons. You're getting clutch hits. You're holding on to leads. I mean, incredible. All things that you had, struggled with offensively, obviously, throughout the entirety of the season to this point. Now you're in the driver's seat. If the season ended today, the Cincinnati Reds would be in the playoffs. That's crazy. That's awesome that we're sitting here saying that on September 22nd. Candidly, I can't believe it that they're in this spot. Now, we've seen this team win some games and string things together in the past and have you believing in the past. And now everybody's back on, especially after winning a 1-0 ball game yesterday to get the sweep. Kind of going into that game, you have Abbott. I've, talked about Andrew Abbott on this show. I love Andrew Abbott. He's been your ace this season, right? I mean, I get Greens. You're paying Green. He technically is the ace player. Andrew Abbott's been your ace this year. He's slowing down a little bit. We all understand that, right? Is Abbott as good now as he was a few weeks ago? No, right? You saw him kind of, they pulled the string on him a little early yesterday, so there's some concern there with how much greatness can you still get out of Andrew Abbott, but he's a dog and he's going to compete every time he's out there. I'm sure they talked about this. I only saw part of their live show. By there, I mean Trace Fowler and Nick Kirby yesterday. It'll be interesting. You got the Pittsburgh Pirates and you got the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll talk about it in a second, but let's just fantasize here for a little bit and act like you got an opportunity in the postseason against the Dodgers. How do you manage that rotation? Who are the guys that you want to take the mound, and when do you want them to take it? Is a really important question. Again, Abbott, in the years past, he's really slowed down. He's gotten a little bit deeper this year than he ever has, but he still clearly does not look like that same guy he was a couple of weeks ago. Would you throw him in game 1, or do you need Hunter Green to go out there as your ace? No, he's going to start, and he's going to be game 1, right? Brady Singer, he's been terrific for you, and he seemingly is getting better. Nobody was talking about Brady Singer for the majority of this year, and all he does is go out there and pitch really well and compete. Is he an ace? No. Is he going to completely shut you down? No. But he's just a grinder, and he shows up every 5th day ready to go and ready to put his team in a position where they could possibly win ball games. That's what he's done all year. So Brady Singer doesn't get nearly enough love. It'd be interesting to see where you would go with him in a series against the Dodgers. But just the fact that we're sitting here on September 22nd kind of fantasizing realistically about, hey, we're going to have a series here in perhaps a week plus where the Reds are playing the Dodgers in the playoffs, defending world champions in Chavez Ravine. Let's go. I mean, that's completely unbelievable that we're in this spot. But be interesting to see if they got there, how Tito would handle things from a pitching perspective, who they would go with, when. With all the Red stuff, I definitely defer to Nick Kirby and Trace Fowler. But just as someone that is a big fan of the Reds, the fact they're in the spot is really, really exciting. But they haven't clinched the playoffs, right? I know based on kind of our conversation on Off the Bench and based on our conversation here, it kind of feels like, oh, we're celebrating. They're in the playoffs. A lot of work to do. Pittsburgh Pirates, you're 6-4 against the Pirates this year. You should be better than that, right? The Pirates stink. You've had more struggles with Pittsburgh this year than you should. So you have to rise up. You have to rise to the occasion, and you have to win this series against Pittsburgh. I think right now my gut says 4-2 gets you in. 6 games left, 3 at home against the Pirates, 3 on the road against the Brewers. I think 4-2 gets you in. So my gut says right now. We'll see. The Mets, of course, are a team that you're competing with. The Diamondbacks are still very much alive in this thing. They're only 1 game behind you as well. So the Diamondbacks are definitely a team that you have an eye on. They've got a tough schedule. Padres, Dodgers, I believe, for them. And the Mets have Cubs and the Marlins. So, shout out to the Nationals for stepping up and helping the Cincinnati Reds. Again, a lot of this is, you're playing great baseball now, but the Mets are selling, right? They really are selling. And we'll see if that continues over the course of this week. Really, really exciting stuff. Singer gets the start tomorrow. Reds are off today, and then they get going on Tuesday. And then that Wednesday game, Paul Skeens and Hunter Green with postseason basically on the line. How great is that going to be? That game is going to be absolutely awesome. Hopefully it's to win the series against Pittsburgh. But, that is going to be an electric environment. You got 3-2 one night on Tuesday. Nick Kirby said that feels like the biggest, series, regular season series at Great American Ballpark. I completely agree. I can't think of another series that would top this. Again, I think even the most optimistic Reds fans kind of went in thinking we're going to need help. Even if we win, we're going to need help the rest of the way. You don't need help anymore. You got all the help. It's in front of you. You can take care of business over the course of these next 6, and you are in. And the fact that you can do that against a team that you should beat. Again, you should have beat the Athletics, and they swept you. So we'll see if the offense can produce at a high enough level to be successful in this series, and if the pitching can continue to do what they've done and put you in a position to be successful. But Tito Francona, lots of people banging on him and how he's operated and how he's managed this ball club. Pushing all the right buttons now, isn't he? And this is why you got Tito Francona, was for these moments. Because the Reds have been in postseason mode all month. Like that, which I think gives them an advantage if they were to make it to the postseason, right? Because they have been playing postseason baseball for a month. And you've seen this in the past where teams are in this kind of state where it's like, well, the playoffs just started about a month earlier, and that they're playing with that style. Every day is do or die. The Diamondbacks is obviously the first team that comes to mind. We saw the Phillies wildcard team a couple of years ago do the same thing as well. So then if you get to the playoffs, it isn't going to necessarily be like this shock of, oh, my goodness, we're in the playoffs. It's like, oh, I mean, yeah, we got national televised games. Yeah, there's more people in the stands. Yeah, it's the Dodgers. Yeah, it's big. But we've been playing this kind of baseball for the past month plus. Whereas the Dodgers, they got to snap in and be like, oh, we're back in the playoffs, and they have a 3-game series, right? Shoot, you pick off that first game, and you got the Dodgers in an elimination game with their backs up against the wall when they're trying to repeat as world champions. That puts you in a really good spot as well. Again, that's thinking ahead. That's fantasizing, right? That's getting excited about a potential postseason series. But that's something we can do realistically now on September 22nd. Who would have thought that we'd be in this position where we could sit there and talk about the Reds actually being in the postseason? I mean, the graphic that's out there right now, right? With where the bracket is right now. I mean, I was just looking at it last night, just kind of in shock. Like, if it ended yesterday, the Reds are in, playing the Dodgers. Shoot, knock off the Dodgers. DS against the Phillies. Shoot, you win that, you're in the CS. You win that, you're in the World Series. Like, yeah, I get it. Reds make the playoffs, probably the worst team in the playoffs. Doesn't matter. It's baseball, right? It's pitching. It's timely hitting. It's postseason environment. It's, pressure getting to people, right? The Reds would come in with absolutely nothing to lose, with a manager that has been there and done that and has had success in these moments. The Reds here with David Bell would not be in this spot. And for all the people that say, oh, Tito's too old school, he's this, he's that, he doesn't know what he's doing, he needs to hang it up. Well, you're here right now because Tito Francona. All right? David Bell would not have this team here. And I'd say that is a fact. And I say that with the utmost amount of certainty. Tito Francona deserves his flowers. And we'll see how he handles these next 6 games. For the people that have been locked in with this Cubs series and locked in with the Cardinals series, they understand that Tito has been excellent these past, week or so, right? Obviously, there are going to be more eyeballs tomorrow. The people that kind of checked out are like, oh, wait a second, we're coming back in here. So there's going to be more eyeballs. So if, he makes one move that people don't agree with, whatever, they might light him up for it a little bit. All right. And then, of course, as the next game progresses, and it's Hunter Green and Paul Skeens, and if he pulls Green early or something. But Tito has pressed all the right buttons to this point. He's doing a tremendous job. He's got this team playing freely. He's got this team playing confidently, and they have momentum. You play 162 games to get to the postseason. It's all about getting hot at the right time, something you talk about across all sports, the NFL included, but more so for baseball here, because if you can just get in, anything can happen. In the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers end up usually getting that last, spot, or the Broncos last year, right? And it's like, oh, well, congrats, you get to say you made the playoffs, but you're cooked. You're about to get blasted and blown out of the stadium. And that's usually what happens. Baseball, it's different, man. Baseball, it's different. It's such a fickle sport. It's just such a, timely hitting, pitching, momentum. Like, all these things kind of factor in, and the best team doesn't always win in baseball. The Super Bowl, it's one game, right? The best team typically wins. Are there upsets? Yes, absolutely. But there's a reason you play a series in baseball along with other sports as well. It takes a little bit longer to get to who really the best team is. The best team doesn't always win, right? You had a full series to prove it, especially early, right? 3 games, best of 3. You pick off that first game, you got all types of pressure if you're the other team that lost, right? And even in a 5-game series or a 7-game series. So the fact that we're in the spot is really, really awesome for the Cincinnati Reds. It's something that should be celebrated, right? Again, this Monday feels a heck of a lot worse if the Reds are cooked, right? And then we're just sitting here talking about how the Bengals got waxed. Well, we're not. That stinks. That's unfortunate. We'll see if they can. The Bengals can bounce back. But right now, this week, we got the Cincinnati Reds, and that certainly is trending in the right direction, and that should have a lot of people fired up as well about that. Plenty of Reds talk on our show throughout the entirety of this week. Hope you join us for that, and that certainly is going to be really, really exciting stuff there. All right, again, Reds off tonight. They're back in action tomorrow against the Pirates in the driver's seat when it comes to securing that final wild card spot. Last couple of minutes, about 5 minutes left here in the show. Let's go around the NFL a little bit as we typically do here on Mondays. Jaguars, they beat the Texans 17-10. Sloppy game, ugly game. Colts clearly look like the best team in that division. C.J. Stroud, the Texans, they're 0-3. Offensively, they're a mess. They don't protect. They don't run the football either in Houston. Jacksonville made a mistake or two fewer than Houston did, and they're able to win that football game. Trevor Lawrence, he had some head-scratching plays as he's had throughout the entirety of this year. But 2 wins, 2-1 for Liam Cohen and the Jaguars. I think he can coach. There were some questions there. He had the press conference where he said Duval or whatever cringy thing that he said that was just like, what are we doing? But he's a football guy, and I think he's going to have some success as the Jaguars head coach. Colts, surprise of the league to this point. 41-20, they beat the Titans. Daniel Jones looks like he's unbelievable at football, which is crazy. We'll see if they can keep it up. Lou Anarumo, he's probably happy through a couple of weeks. He's smiling, right? His defense, they're playing just fine. We'll see if that continues for Indianapolis. Shane Steichen, he's a really good head coach and a really good play caller. He hasn't gotten a lot of credit because he's had to deal with just craziness at the quarterback position. They might have a stable guy in Daniel Jones. They're playing really, really well. Commanders win with Marcus Mariota. Raiders are a mess. Off-season they had an opportunity to go after Sam Darnold. Tom Brady said no. They were stuck with Geno Stone. I think they probably wish they had Sam Darnold here at this point. Talk about really good backups in the NFL. Marcus Mariota, obviously years ago, was a high draft pick, Heisman Trophy winner. Really good backup quarterback. He came in and executed Cliff Kingsbury's offense to perfection, and they get a big win at home against the Raiders. Eagles win 33-26 against the Rams. Best bets of the weekend on the Stone Shield show. Loved the Rams. Loved them in this game. Thought it was, probably my favorite pick of the season to this point, to be completely honest with you. The Los Angeles Rams, they were up, I think it was 26-7, something crazy. They blew that game. Philadelphia comes down. They convert on 4th down. They get the 4th and goal play. They score. They take the lead. Stafford, as I think a lot of us expected, he marches it down the field, does a tremendous job, puts them in field goal range. It gets blocked. Eagles win. They pick it up and they house it as well as time expires, and they cover the spread in that game as well. Heartbreaking loss. Eagles, by the way, we'll have our power rankings later in the week, but spoiler alert, Eagles back at that number 1 spot. Panthers respond in a big way. They get their first win of the season. Bryce Young plays really well, 30-0 as they 21 skunk the Atlanta Falcons. Steelers win 21-14. Aaron Rodgers, he can still make those plays, man. He can still make those plays. Patriots continuously shot themselves in the foot. They had 1 million fumbles in that game, but if you make those kinds of mistakes against Pittsburgh, great head coach, quarterback that knows what he's doing, they're going to win a lot of games this year. Shocker of the weekend, Browns beat the Packers. I said the Packers were the best team in the NFL. Clearly did not look like that this past week. This Browns defense, man, is so good. Really, really good. Obviously, they gave up a lot of points to Baltimore the previous week. But that was a lot of, funny stuff, turnovers, short fields, right, in that game there as well. So, the Browns, man, I think a lot of people were like, at some point they'll just move on from Flacco and we'll see either Shador or Dylan Gabriel. But big win for them. If they can put a couple more wins together, they might ride this thing out with Flacco. That defense is really, really good. Baker Mayfield does it again. 3 game-winning drives already through 3 games. The block, field goal return for a touchdown for the Jets. but then Baker, poised, calm, moves him down the field, kick a field goal. Mike Evans gets hurt. We'll see, what his health is like going forward. But Tampa Bay looks like a really, really good team in the NFC. Baker Mayfield playing at a tremendously high level. Chargers beat the Broncos 23-20. Bengals need to make that a low-scoring game on Monday. We'll see if they are able to do that. Chargers are really, really good. Herbert looks great. Harbaugh's got him playing tough and physical. He edges Sean Payton 23-20 in that game. Seahawks blow out the Saints. Saints worst team in the National Football League. Sam Darnold plays well. They run the ball well. Defense, they fly around crazy. They make plays. Seattle, look for them as a potential playoff team as well with Sam Darnold. I really like the Cowboys in the game against the Bears. But Ben Johnson showed his brilliance really for the first time this year. I think it's evident even through the first two losses. Okay, Ben Johnson, he's a head coach in this league. But the stuff they were doing from play calling perspective was great. They played with their hair on fire. They were 0-2. They needed to win at home, and they win. That Cowboys defense is awful. Really no two ways around that. The Micah Parsons thing, I mean, they're a completely different team. They have Micah Parsons. But that defense is dreadful. And Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, they carved him up. Vegas clearly knew what they were doing there with that game. Dax played really well, only 14 points. The pick wasn't his fault. He'll be just fine going forward. But a big win for Chicago and Caleb Williams as he kind of gets that back on the right track. And then Mac Jones, 16-15, game-winning drive. His knee's all messed up. His jersey's ripped in half. Gutsy from Mac Jones and Kyle Shanahan. Felt like Cardinals were a fraudulent 2-0 team. Would be surprised if they make the playoffs. Big win for Shanahan. Purdy probably going to be back next week. Mac Jones comes in, plays two really good football games as the starter. We'll see if a team maybe next year views him as a potential bridge quarterback and gives him a chance to be a starter because Mac Jones, kind of unfair how things ended in New England. He's a really good quarterback, in my opinion, and he showed it yesterday, and he showed it the week prior against the Saints there as well. Chiefs break through. That was a no-brainer. Defensively, obviously only 9 points scored for the Giants. Things still turbulent offensively for them. Not clean, disorganized, chaotic, but they do enough to pick up their first win of the year, and I think they're going to continue to get better and still be a playoff team. Banger tonight, Lions and Ravens. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. I think Baltimore wins that game and covers, but we'll see. As we progress and watch that game tonight and talk about it tomorrow as well. We'll talk more Bengals stuff here on the show tomorrow, and we'll have a Reds preview for Game 1 of the Pirates series as they look to make the playoffs. Pretty exciting stuff in that regard. But that'll do it for this edition of the Stone Shield Show. Again, be sure to look out for the podcast that'll go up later today, as well as more clips on YouTube, social media. Follow us at Stone Shields _ on Twitter, and also at the Stone Shields is our Twitter page for the show here, so give us a follow there as well. But that'll do it for this Monday show. We will be back on Tuesday. By the way, no Friday show. Doesn't look like there's going to be a Friday show again this week, but we'll be here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday throughout this week, and then we'll be there Monday through Friday the rest of the way, but looking like no Friday show here this week. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow right here at the Stone Shield Show.